just when we thought that the 2020 election was over, that maybe 2020 was over. I saw a meme a little while ago. It had a little cartoon of Kylo Ren talking to the Darth Vader helmet, and it's like, Kylo Ren's 2021, the Darth Vader helmet's 2020, and he says, "I will finish what you started." It seems like we are suddenly, locked in the same pattern. Today there was, and I'm going to tell you that I have not spent an extensive amount of time learning the details. I went to the diner this afternoon after work, and I heard that somebody got shot. I saw pictures of people storming the U.S. Capitol. Some people even with Confederate flags, like right there inside the U.S. Capitol. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of what happened today because I don't know that they're worth looking into more than what I saw, because it really has very little bearing on what I have to say today. Is that we need to think about how we got here, how we got to the point where people are storming the Capitol to pressure legislators from certifying the result of the Electoral College. And it's always interesting. I see that people get on Google, and one of the top searches for me is Tom Richey political beliefs. I try not to go into that too much. I've really given my podcast a hiatus. That this podcast is something that I initially conceived as something where I would share my thoughts on current events. But over the past year, current events really haven't been worth talking about. But after what we saw today, I think that we do need to think about how we got here. Okay. Why was this rally called today? Okay. Which I'm not judging people who went to the rally. I know that most of these people had peaceful intentions, but why have a rally in Washington, D.C. on the day that Congress is going to certify the Electoral College unless there is an attempt to pressure Congress in terms of voting to certify the Electoral College, which is really a procedural thing? And at what point is losing an election, like at what point is it okay to admit that you lost, even if you may not think that it's fair? Okay, even if you may not think that it's fair, even if you think that there were some irregularities, that some things were not done right, when can you quit? Okay, when is it time? As Obi Wan Kenobi once said, "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." And at what point does somebody, instead of trying to somersault and get 3 of your limbs cut off, just to say, you know what, it's over? And with this, I would say that, Robert E. Lee has not been a very popular guy in 2020. Let's say you haven't really been a popular guy. I've got a Robert E. Lee mug that I once got at a, Civil War gift shop. And he definitely has not been a popular guy. But at the same time, when I was growing up, and this is my story, okay? If somebody has something else to say, that's fine. Go ahead and say it. But the thing is that Robert E. Lee, when I was growing up, I would hear over and over again about the character of Robert E. Lee, and say what you want about him, that one of the most honorable things, and something that, if somebody wants to debate me on this, I'd be glad to, but the way that Robert E. Lee, once he saw that there was no path to victory, no credible path to victory for the Army of Northern Virginia, he surrendered it. He didn't try to keep fighting. He could have told his men, "Go and disperse and shoot as many Yankees as you can. Let's never give in to these people." But it wouldn't have been the honorable thing to do. And I've got a few things that I want to look at here. Is, first of all, Robert E. Lee's farewell address to the Army of Northern Virginia. That Ulysses S. Grant and his army had been in Virginia for nearly a year, for about 11 months. And Robert E. Lee resisted and resisted and resisted until he realized that that is not an option anymore. And at that point, he did not endanger his men, but he surrendered the army, and he did so in a gesture of peace and honor. When he gave his farewell address to the Army of Northern Virginia, General Order Number 9, April 10th, 1865. After 4 years of arduous service marked by unsurpassed courage and fortitude, the Army of Northern Virginia has been compelled to yield to overwhelming numbers and resources. I need not tell the survivors of so many hard-fought battles, who have remained steadfast to the last, that I have consented to the result from no distrust of them, but feeling that valor and devotion could accomplish nothing that could compensate for the loss that must have attended the continuance of the contest. I have determined to avoid the useless sacrifice of those whose past services have endeared them to their countrymen. By the terms of the agreement, officers and men can return to their homes and remain until exchanged. You will take with you the satisfaction that proceeds from the consciousness of duty faithfully performed, and I earnestly pray that a merciful God will extend to you his blessing and protection. With an unceasing admiration of your constancy and devotion to your country, and a grateful remembrance of your kind and generous consideration for myself, I bid you an affectionate farewell. R.E. Lee. Now, where is this kind of language, or where has this been from the President of the United States? Now, Robert E. Lee may have believed that Grant's army was in Virginia illegally. He might have thought that the war was rigged. You know, the other side had more resources, but at the same time, at the end of the day, he surrendered his army when he saw that there was nothing to be gained by continuing to fight. And whether it's the President of the United States, whether it is the person waving a Confederate flag in the Capitol, you know, looking back at the way that Robert E. Lee handled defeat and did so honorably is it's something to think about here. And not just that, but when people are looking back and seeing here that, we see here in a eulogy of Robert E. Lee that was delivered in the early 20th century. It said here he's going into Robert E. Lee's military exploits. He took but 1 week to defeat McClellan's great army, relieve the siege of Richmond, and reinstall himself as the best loved hero in all the South. Then followed the course of time, the great battles of Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Wilderness, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, and Petersburg, in which his matchless leadership thrilled the world. But perhaps the true greatness of the man was more vividly displayed after his surrender at Appomattox, when he said, "I have led the young men of the South in battle. I have seen many of them fall under my standard. I shall devote my life now to training young men to do their duty in life." And that is the thing where you see that looking back, when we think about historical legacies, then you look at someone who fought hard and fought well, but at the end of the day knew when he was beaten and did so honorably. Okay, now this isn't about whether somebody thinks that the election was fair, that the election was rigged, that there was fraud or anything like that. It's about once the Electoral College certified the result of the election, once the courts did not hear the lawsuits, once they were not settled in the president's favor, that is where, when you think about the construction of legacy, and of course, we see that, Lee's statues are not nearly as numerous as they were a few years back, but they were there for a long time. And while people may have their ideas about why those statues were there, there is very much an element of the admiration of Robert E. Lee's character, which was present in his surrender, okay, in the way that he chose to live his life. Now, one letter that we often see quoted, and this is quick shout out to my friend Jerry, who wrote this article where this is quoted here, that there was one time let's see, let me make sure that I'm looking at the actually here. Okay, so this is Lee writing to a Southern mother who had written to him, okay, and this mother had written this invective, okay, with this as Jerry says, a heart wrenching of hatred towards the North. Okay, so Robert E. Lee read this letter by this woman who was filled with hate. A woman who, may have lost her sons in the war and filled with hate. But he writes back to this mother, Madam, don't bring your sons up to detest the United States government. Recollect that we form one country now. Abandon all these local animosities and make your sons Americans. And that is the thing when we're thinking about these local animosities, detesting the United States government, acting like the country is somehow over because the other party won an election. And especially coming from, something I remind, any of my Republican friends who, say they're down in the dumps right now. At what point, is a party who has the majority of the governorships, the majority of the state legislatures, and is in the minority in both houses of Congress by the smallest of margins, okay? Just one seat in the Senate and 10 seats in the House. And what is wrong with our country right now? I mean, really, when you think about it, why can we not get over? Why can we not get over the election of 2020 and remember that we are one country now, and to go home and make our sons and daughters and whoever else we come into contact with, to make them Americans, and again, no judgment if somebody's watching that was, at the rally today, protesting peacefully. But from my point of view, there was no there was no reason for that rally other than to pressure legislators who were going through a procedural hurdle. Tom Cotton, a senator from Arkansas, a Republican of bona fide conservative credentials, he said that he was not going to vote against certification of the Electoral College. He said the founders trusted our elections chiefly to the states, not Congress. They entrusted the election of our president to the people, acting through the Electoral College, not Congress. And they entrusted the adjudication of electoral disputes to the courts, not Congress. And here is someone who realizes it's over, Anakin. Okay, I have the high ground. Here's someone who realizes that Robert E. Lee, okay, who people can say whatever they want about, and most people who criticize Robert E. Lee or say that he wasn't a man of strong character and honor don't really know the guy, okay? And there are so many historical figures that, people don't really know and they render judgment against. But, no matter what opinion you want to have about Robert E. Lee, let's think about what he is remembered for doing most honorably and making a gesture to unite the country when he could have been the divider in chief. Nobody was better placed to lead a continued rebellion and to stoke continued division than Robert E. Lee was. But he made that choice. Okay, he made that choice and he thanked his men for their service. And he said that I have full confidence in you, but we're going to be compelled to yield to overwhelming numbers and resources. And that is where at some point, no matter what happened in the election, that result needs to be honored. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's just breathe here. Okay, let's take a breather and let's take a moment to remember that what the things that the media and other self-interested parties and, leaders of the political parties that they try to tell us that we're going into a civil war, that this was a literal coup, as somebody said. Okay, so just Seriously, people, the election has happened. The election is over. When you look at the way the pieces are on the board right now, no party is really in control of everything. Okay, the Republicans, have a firm hold on the federal judiciary. They have a slim minority in both houses of Congress. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would remind you one last time of that advice that Lee gave the hate-ridden Southern mother that wrote to him and gently told her, please, don't bring your sons up to detest the United States government. Recollect that we form one country now. Abandon all of these local animosities and make your sons Americans. Thank you.